So in this episode, King's Landing is destroyed, but Daenerys decides that she, for some reason, has to kill all of the Lannister soldiers, even though they have surrendered and are now disarmed prisoners. Daenerys says that Cersei tried to use her mercy against her, but since the surrender, it's not clear what strategic advantage she thinks this will have. I guess she wants to send a message to other potential enemies, but who would that even be at this point? Is she trying to specifically intimidate Sansa? Maybe she's trying to send the message that Sansa had better not try to rebel. Maybe that's why she doesn't kill Jon right away. Maybe she intended to keep Jon as a hostage and try to use him as a bargaining chip to get Sansa to bend the knee. Tyrion seems pretty devastated by the whole affair, which many folks have pointed out is pretty odd considering how just a few seasons ago he said he'd like to see everyone in King's Landing die. What could have made him grow so much sympathy for that town and for his sister? Maybe when it was clear that neither were any longer a threat to him, he was able to see things from a different perspective. Daenerys gives her Bane speech right after this shot, which made me think, geez, that's kind of on the nose. And Tyrion throws his hand pin on the ground right in front of everyone, and Daenerys does nothing but imprison him, which is hard to reconcile with the fact that she just killed thousands of innocent people. People who were harmless to her were killed, but someone who posed a genuine threat by committing treason in front of her army just gets locked up. I wish that had been explained somehow. Not only does Daenerys not kill Tyrion, she makes no effort to keep Jon from talking to him, which is also odd given that she has every reason not to trust Jon either. Tyrion explains all of the unnecessary violence that Daenerys has committed to try to convince Jon that he needs to put the brakes on things. Also, he needed to make it look like killing thousands of innocent people is consistent with her character. Jon confronts Daenerys and seems interested in giving her one more chance. When he approaches the Red Keep, Drogon, who was presumably guarding the entrance, gets up out of the snow in what was my favorite shot of the episode. Drogon seems to figure that Jon isn't a threat and lets him enter the keep. Daenerys makes it clear that she won't hold back on the brutality she intends to use to pacify the rest of the world, and Jon decides to stab her in the heart. Drogon's reaction is to melt the Iron Throne. There are a couple of ways I see to interpret this, and both seem a little silly. One is that Drogon somehow understood that the throne and Daenerys' desire to achieve it was ultimately the cause of her death, which seems a little far-fetched. The other is that he saw that she had been stabbed with a dagger and saw a chair made of swords, and I guess he thought the chair did it. That would be kind of funny. Given that Daenerys knew both that Jon questioned her goals and that he has a legitimate claim to the throne, it's rather surprising that she would even trust him enough to let him get close enough to stab her in the first place. Maybe she thought that securing him as a bargaining chip would be worth the risk. This is a bit of headcanon that I have that I think would really have improved the episode had they explained things this way. If this interpretation is incorrect, then it's pretty hard to understand Daenerys' motivations. They seem to make no sense. A few weeks later, the other lords of Westeros meet and ask to speak to Tyrion and Jon. I suppose since Daenerys didn't order Tyrion's execution, it makes sense that he would still be alive, but it seems awfully hard to believe that Grey Worm's reaction to finding out that Jon killed his queen is merely to imprison him. I didn't think we'd see Yara again, but she's at this meeting sitting next to a random Dornish guy. She doesn't like that Daenerys was killed one bit. Davos tries to convince Grey Worm to take the Unsullied to an unoccupied area of the Reach and establish his own house there. Grey Worm would rather have justice, though. Tyrion tries to step in, and Grey Worm tells him to shut up, but then Tyrion just keeps talking and tells the lords to choose a king or a queen. Uncle Edmure Tully tries to make a campaign speech, but Sansa tells him to sit down. Sam was at the meeting, and at first I thought he was made Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and he was there representing them, but then I remembered that he is heir to Horn Hill. He can't be Lord of Horn Hill, though, unless he's abandoned the Night's Watch. Because if he's still a member, he's not allowed to be Lord of anything. He proposes that the king or queen be elected, but everyone thinks that's a terrible idea. Tyrion says that what unites people the most is stories, which is a very convenient thing for screenwriters to come up with. Since Bran has a cool backstory and knows the whole history of Westeros, he can unite the kingdom, I guess. That reasoning seems like a bit of a stretch to me, but whatever. Sansa points out that a catch would be that Bran can't father any children. I have no idea how Sansa knows that, but Tyrion thinks that's a good thing, because the hereditary system should be done away with anyway, and Westeros should oligarchically choose its leaders from now on. Yara agrees to go along with this, which seems a little odd to me given that she was so upset that Jon Snow killed Daenerys and Bran is so close to Jon. Sansa says that the North will remain an independent kingdom, but if she can do that, why wouldn't the rest of the lords and ladies want to do the same? I suppose if they're all one kingdom, they are less likely to go to war with one another. If the North is the odd one out, they're going to have trouble protecting themselves, although I suppose they might be able to form an alliance with the wildlings. Bran decides to send Jon Snow back to the Night's Watch for killing Daenerys. Apparently the Night's Watch still exists because, as Tyrion says, the world will always need a home for bastards and broken men. Since they spent several generations just spying on the wildlings, I guess they'll just keep doing that. Or maybe they can act as liaisons between the wildlings and the rest of Westeros. Grey Worm decides to take the Unsullied to Noth. Hopefully he'll live up to his promise to Missandei to protect the people there. Arya decides to sail west of Westeros to see what's out there. Of all of the character endings on this show, I think I like Arya's the best. It's the most consistent with her character, and it's arguably the least sad. Brienne writes a surprisingly flattering entry about Jaime in the book about commanders of the Kingsguard, and has apparently become commander herself. They let Bronn be master of coin, and he wants to spend the kingdom's money on rebuilding the brothels first before the navy is rebuilt or the sewer system is redesigned to be more sanitary. I know Tyrion made a deal with him to have Highgarden, but why does he need to be in Bran's cabinet? He seems like he's just going to be a giant pain in the ass. Jon rides north of the Wall with the wildlings for some reason, and that's how the show ends. On the whole, I enjoyed this season. There were numerous obvious problems, but I found them to be largely superficial. They didn't spoil my fun that much. The most frustrating thing is that I think most of it could have been fixed by just putting a few lines of dialogue in here and there to explain what seemed like counterintuitive motivations.